I'll start with this one. I really like this material. I'm not sure what it is. I wish I had a bunch of this stuff. It's really nice. It does have some areas in it that are chalky, but it's not too bad at all. Just near the cortex. I mean, it's not. There's nothing that I can see on the inside, and it looks pretty consistent. Just very, very small pockets of chalky stuff on the inside. This is a piece of pink granite from Central Texas. Works really well as an abrader. It was really windy earlier. I hope the wind, well, it has died down a little bit. I hope you can't hear it on the video too much. Sorry about that. I don't know if I was in the frame or not. Okay. I'm not sure which type of point this will be. I'm just going to make a triangular preform and then see how it ends up, what size it is, and then from there I'll choose what point to make out of it. Maybe another bell point, I don't know. Most triangular shapes are very easily made into a bell or a shumla or something like that. I want to try to stay with Central Texas points, so I'll look in my book over here, the Overstreet Guide, and see what I can compare the preform to. It's a bit tough, but it's not too bad. This material flakes really easily as long as the platforms are prepared well. I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. But you can tell the raw stone really bites into the copper, and I have to keep pressing that copper tip. But right now I'm just rotating it around and using the areas that are not too beat up on there. I'm probably not going to film all the points I'm going to send you, just because it's a lot quicker for me if I don't. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes with the with these two. I would like to film them all. Well, all the rest of them, I didn't film the first three. Probably wouldn't want to see that anyway. I was getting pretty frustrated with the antlers and stuff. Okay. In order to work this with with antlers and stuff, I have to prepare really precise and large platforms, and then if I get it too thin, which is possible, if I get it too thin, it ends up breaking, because the antler really grabs the edge, and when I'm doing pressure or whatever and it's really thin, it'll snap. So I had to do a balance, or maintain a balance between not too thin and do my pressure work and all the percussion work around the edges to shape it, and then thin again, and have enough material so I can thin that after the general shaping. But that's just flint knapper stuff. Probably not all that interesting. Of course, the Native Americans wouldn't have copper, I don't think. Not large amounts anyway. Maybe small amounts for little pressure flakers, and maybe for a bit like this, and that's about it. And a bit like this would only be used on a very stubborn area. It wouldn't probably be used for the whole entire point. Not like I'm doing anyway, because I got plenty of copper. That's one hazard of percussion. You get these bites taken out of the edge once it starts getting thin and you're working with raw material. Heat treated, it's not so much, because the edge will usually crush before it digs out a bite like this. But with raw stone, it's a little tougher. The edge stays intact. The energy's got to go somewhere, so it usually just goes further in and cracks. Makes that ring-shaped crack. Takes a bite out of your edge, which is very frustrating. And you see step fractures like this with the real ones, it's very common, but I'm going to try to get all of those out. Or I always try to get those removed before I finish a piece. So it's pretty bumpy right now. I gotta move more of that cortex. Gotta be very careful at this stage. It's It's really easy to remove too much mass in one area and then get too thin somewhere, and then run the risk of having a break in that thin area. So let's see, use my artificial abrader to really abrade the edge and get a lot of that material rounded off for a strong platform to strike in here and remove as much of this as I can with as few strikes as possible. That's usually the goal. The more times you hit it, the more chance there is of breaking it. So this is getting pretty flat, which is the goal. It's best to flatten one side first and then prepare the edge to flatten the other side next. Flatten one side at a time instead of trying to flatten both at the same time. I think that was done a lot in the past also. Some of these preforms will be much flatter on one side than the other. So what they were doing was they flattened one side first, and then well, for some reason this was cached or discarded somewhere, but the next step would be to fix this edge so the platforms would be lower to drive flakes across the face of that bumpy side. You know, the flakes would be removed this way, and then that would bring this edge closer to this side, and then flakes would be driven across this bumpy area, and that would continue one side, then the next side, then the next side, until it finally got down to the shape and size for final finishing. Still not quite flat enough. I'm going to take a couple more flakes off the flat side to flatten it even more. Now that's a step fracture. I'm going to have to come in from the other side and try to remove that. This was a common strategy too. In the past they would, drive flakes to the middle. They would step right there, but then they could clear them off from the other side, and it would thin out the middle very effectively. Because these flakes tend to dive in just a little bit. So from this view, there'd be a slight depression in the middle. Once I get flakes driven from both sides, I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but there'll be a slight depression in the middle, which means the middle is thin or thinner than the sides. And I have some artifacts that show that type of thinning. So I know that it was done that way sometimes. I'm going to use some support here. Doesn't look like much of a support. It's more of a support for the flakes instead of the workpiece, what happens is this pad will hold the flake in place while it's being removed, and that means that, you know, the energy stays here in this spot. If the flake stays together, the energy travels down the flake. If the flake starts to come apart, the energy just kind of dissipates and doesn't get transferred down the line to the other portions that might have been chipped off. See, it may have only, if I didn't have that pad support, this may have been the only flake, but since I did, I've also got this flake. So the first flake terminated, you know, kind of short, but then with a pad support, this other portion was driven off. Was able to be driven off because I didn't lose that flake. It didn't fly off, and I didn't lose that energy. If you look here, it's dipping in the middle from both sides just a little bit, which is a good strategy for thinning out the center, but it takes a lot of practice. What I'm going to do now is just prepare the edge for more flakes to be removed from this rounded side, this side here. I was taking some flakes off, but those were just big ones off the edge. I want to try to get some flakes to travel down and, you know, past the center line instead of just taking them off the edge. So I'm going to prepare the edge well and use a pad support, drive some longer flakes, and hopefully get finished thinning it down. I'm just bracing my hand against my leg there. I was kind of out in the open. There's too much movement, so if I brace my hand against my leg, there's less movement. I can press off thicker flakes. And the reason why I want to do that is just speeds up the process. I don't have to. I can remove many small thin flakes, but it speeds it up if you can remove thicker flakes. So now I'm just going to randomly remove flakes using pad support from either side or wherever I feel needs to be removed in order to thin it down. Pressing up the copper tip to remove those dents from the previous passes that I was hitting pretty hard on the stone. That's because it's raw. It's a pretty tough piece, but it flakes well. Just need a lot of force, that's all. Okay. Yeah, I should have used the pad. The flake may have traveled further. It may not have, but it's always better to be safe. I'll get back to it in a little bit. Yeah, you can see that last little bit came off. It was probably not going to come off unless I had used the pad. Those bites out of the side there. It's not too bad. It does remove a lot of width though. It's annoying. I tried to take off a flake that was way too thick, and it just kind of crumbled right there. Trying to take off a flake that's too thick for the platform. Platform couldn't handle it. I mean, the stone probably could have handled it, but the platform couldn't. I mean, the thickness could have handled a large flake, but the platform was too weak to support it, so it just kind of crushed. This one is a much stronger platform there. Just digging into my copper. Slipped off. Maybe a little too strong. Can't get the flake to release. Okay. Maybe one or two more large flake removals, and that would be it. A lot of times I don't use a pad, and I don't use it very often in my other videos. In fact, I don't think I use it at all in my other videos. It's because it's kind of cumbersome. Anyway, I'm going to try a few more large flake removals, and that would be it. I was just kind of cleaning up the edges there. Another reason why I don't use a pad in a lot of my other videos is because of the new guys. There's a lot to worry about as far as learning the flint knapping without having to deal with that pad. Although it might not have done, well, I don't know. I might not have done the right strategy there. I'll introduce the soft pad in my future videos. That's not good. There's some imperfections in the stone. Another one of those annoying bites. I'm not going to worry about removing all that cortex. It's a nice contrast. It looks pretty cool. So. Alright, so that's the basic shape. It's thin enough. I just need to do some cosmetic fixing of the edge here. And then I'll decide what I want to make out of it. It's a little bit smaller than the other bell point. I don't know, I'll see. But these two are the same material. It's 34 minutes. I'll cut it off there. I'll just finish this. Well, I'll do another video when I finish it. I was going to finish it off camera, but I'll just go ahead and make another video. Okay.